Good evening, everybody. Happy almost New Year. Been a few days since I was actually on a live stream, but got the holidays behind me, so now we're jumping into this. So, here's what I think is the most interesting thing about Trump's attacks against our own allies is that, look, the people who voted for him because they wanted cheaper eggs, right? Like they wanted cheaper chicken at the grocery store. And instead of that, what they're getting when push comes to shove is, I don't know, impending war against our own allies because Donald Trump has decided, apropos of nothing, that we need to annex sovereign countries as part of our own country. This has been broached with Canada, with Panama, with Greenland. And at first I thought it was just something of a joke because Donald Trump is a professional provocateur, and so this is what provocateurs do. They provoke. But he spent so much time on this that there is the worry now that he becomes pot committed, right? Like this is how he operates. He spends so much time attacking our own allies that eventually he convinces himself that if he doesn't follow through with all of this stuff, that it's somehow an abdication of his word and it makes him seem weak. And Trump graduated from the let's fix this. And Trump graduated from the Roy Cohn School of Management, and so any capitulation whatsoever eventually makes you feel like you're losing somehow, like it's a sign of weakness. And so there is the possibility that Donald Trump does see what he's doing right now and kind of take it full bore all the way. And like I said before, I thought at first when I had seen this that it was him just being a professional provocateur, but he's kept it on for quite a while. I'm gonna show you what his Truth Social feed looks like. I believe this is today. So this is 6 hours ago. He retruthed a report saying Kevin O'Leary says he will go to Mar-a-Lago to start the narrative about merging Canada with the United States because, quote, we don't want Trudeau negotiating this deal. So I guess not only is this deal, according to Donald Trump, happening, but now Kevin O'Leary is anointing himself the new Prime Minister of Canada, who will have the responsibility of abdicating Canada's sovereignty on the global stage so that it can then merge into the United States and become the 51st state of the United States. And in fact, O'Leary's been on Fox News. I don't know why this is some, I mean, other than like, look, there are clearly fascistic fever dreams within Trump. Like he has that whole like strongman mentality, the autocratic mentality, and so this idea that all of a sudden we need to annex sovereign countries is perfectly in line with that. Like, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that the first thing Trump wants to do after winning an election predicated on lowering the cost of eggs is him saying, like, I see your desire to lower the cost of eggs, but I raise you. How about we invade and annex our closest neighbor to the north as part of this country? And so look, it's not the most surprising thing in the world that he would then like defer to this. But O'Leary has been on Fox News. Here's a little bit of what he's saying with regard to this issue.
Born in Toronto or in Calgary and Montreal wants to keep that, but combining our countries together with a common currency, a viable passporting system after you're approved, as they have in EU. We'd be the most powerful nation on earth. What do the Canadians got? Unlimited water, unlimited power, unlimited paper, unlimited reserves of every kind. There's only 40 million of them, aside of California. And they don't want to squabble. They want to trade north, south, east, west.
Real quick, can you guys let me know if the audio is as bad as it sounds to me, to the rest of you? Can you all hear that audio? You just let me know in the chat real quick my audio from my headphone is unlistenable. Let me try a different video.
We're the richest nation on earth by every single measure.
Tell me if that audio is okay, because mine sounds completely incomprehensible. I get that if it's in one ear, but is it completely incomprehensible, or is that just my headphones? Aside from it being one ear, is the audio understandable? Is it comprehensible? It's understandable. Okay. All right. If it's understandable, okay, then let's keep listening.
So the ideas are simple: common currency, common defense of the North against the Chinese. I'm not a fan of the Chinese government. Everybody knows that. And I worry about that, and everybody should. And the Russians, too. We don't need them messing around up north. We could make that very, very clear to them. And what country on earth would mess with a combined economic entity? You don't have to give up your citizenship. You don't have to give up your sovereignty either way if you're American or Canadian under this idea. But let's get the kernel of economic interest together, figure out what these...
So O'Leary is making the case here, I guess, on behalf of Canada. Like, apropos of nothing, O'Leary has anointed himself the new Prime Minister of Canada, making this case. Look, he's making the case for how wealthy the U.S. would be with Canada, with the 51st state. But, like, I feel what's missing in all of this. Let's do the lead in here.
Could the American flag be adding another star in 2025? Well, Trump's idea of making Canada great again by turning it into the 51st state is gaining some serious traction, especially from Canadian citizens. 33-year-old Ryan Hemsley told the Free Press that in Canada, quote, "You wake up and survive," he said. "There's no opportunity."
So this is the perfect encapsulation of Fox News. This is what Fox News and the right do perfectly. They'll find random people in Canada, and it will make its way from like Zero Hedge or the Daily Wire or Breitbart, where some random Canadian dude in a country of, how many people are in Canada? 40 million people. Some random dude will say, yeah, I want Trump to usurp my country because I'm a MAGA guy who just happens to live in Canada. And then it filters its way up all the way to Fox News, where Kayleigh McEnany starts off by saying...
Could the American flag be adding another star in 2025? Well, Trump's idea of making Canada great again by turning it into the 51st state is gaining some serious traction,
especially from Canadian citizens. What she's not saying is that when she says especially from Canadian citizens, that's like 4 of them. And so now on the biggest conservative network on television, forget conservative network, the biggest news network on television, we are humoring this idea that Canada is going to like join the United States without anybody acknowledging the one minor detail that Canada's not for sale. Feels like that might be an important detail of all of this. The country that we're discussing the logistics of merging into the U.S. and combining our two economies, it ain't for sale. Like, we're not going to buy Canada because Canada isn't being sold to the U.S., but that doesn't seem to matter. One, it's an embarrassment on the world stage. That this is happening in the first place. Two, it makes a mockery of our allies at the hands of the incoming president. And I think that there's actually a lot there to that aspect of it, because we clearly have enemies in this country, right? We have Xi Jinping in China. We have Vladimir Putin in Russia. Erdogan is antithetical to the U.S., created the biggest illiberal democracy in Europe. There's the Bolsonaros of the world, formerly of Brazil, and so there are plenty of these strongmen who are adversaries to the United States. Trump will do nothing to earn the scorn of those people. He wouldn't dare do anything that might invite that he wouldn't dare speak one ill word of these people. But before he even gets into office, all he's doing with his political capital is expending it on basically not just perpetuating fights, but picking fights, starting them where there existed none, with not only random countries in the world, not only our enemies, but our actual allies, our closest neighbor to the north, or Panama, with whom we share a more than 100-year-old alliance, or I don't know if what our alliance is with Greenland, but it's certainly not hostile. And yet these are the people who he's opting to use his political capital to mock on the international stage. And so if this doesn't give some indication of what's to come as we move, well, not even forward in Trump's administration, but into Trump's administration, I don't know what will, because this shows the hostility that he's going to treat our own allies with. And it probably foretells a lot about how he's going to deal with NATO, with the rest of our alliances, how he's going to abdicate our responsibility on the world stage when it comes to whether we stay in NATO or not, and defer completely to Vladimir Putin, who, look, his biggest ask in life is to get the U.S. out of NATO and to undermine NATO, because that's the only thing stopping Putin's eastward expansionism into Ukraine and then the rest of Europe. So let's fix this right here. I got to figure out a better solution for this, so that this thumbs up doesn't kill me every time. In any case, this does speak volumes about how we can expect Donald Trump to proceed into his administration. And yeah, we are going to see more mockery. And I don't know if he's doing it to purposefully provoke Canada, to purposefully provoke I don't see some benefit. I mean, maybe just to exacerbate tensions, and so that when there is inevitably some trade war that, by the way, Donald Trump himself would start, he can try to politicize it and make it into something where it's like, okay, well, these people, already have some hostility to the U.S. because we wanted to buy them, and they dared say that they weren't for sale. I really don't know the long-term play here. Maybe it's just like him trying to be an entertainer and garner attention that way. Or look, maybe he's deathly serious about it, and he wants to try and usher in some second era of American expansionism, and we expand down into Panama, into Central America, expand up into Canada and Greenland. I'm not really sure of his endgame, but one thing is for sure, it's not helping our alliances. It's most likely hurting our alliances. It may very well, at its worst point, upends the global order that we've relied on in the aftermath of World War II to preserve the longest period of peace and prosperity in the world, and that's what we're heading toward. And like the way that Fox News, which, look, the weirdest part of all of this is presumably Fox is there with some degree of like they are where their consumers are, and they've been bashing a lot of the a lot of the purported war hawking that they blamed the Biden administration for engaging in, and so they want more of an isolationist era with Donald Trump. That this is the whole America First agenda, right? Like they don't want any global interventionism happening. That was in large part why Trump had won. And in fact, I had a conversation with Cenk Uygur the other day, which I'll talk about momentarily. But he said that he believed, and he said this, in what I think was good faith, that he believed that the red line for these people, for these Trump supporters, is that they truly want isolationism. They truly do not want global interventionism anymore. They are anti-war through and through. And yet the first thing that these people do before they even take office is talk about annexing a foreign country. Well, guess what? Canada's not for sale. And so the only way to get Canada, the only way to get Greenland, the only way to get Panama is by what? Invading it? And so the first thing before you even take office, when you ran on a platform of anti-interventionalism, of isolationism, of America First, is to discuss the prospect, whether in jest or in earnest, of annexing a sovereign country, annexing 3 sovereign countries right off the bat. And so when let me see if I can pull up in just a moment, or maybe somebody can pull up for me part of my debate with Cenk Uygur on my channel. I asked him this should be pretty relatively easy to find, but I asked him what the red line would be. Damn it, did I do it again? I asked him what the red line would be for these Trump supporters, and he promised again that their anti-war mentality would be the thing for these people, and my beef with that was basically just like, these people do not actually care about anything. You claim that these Trump supporters have these long-standing values, and that, okay, as soon as Donald Trump goes back on his promise to be anti-war or anti-interventionism, that suddenly they're going to turn on him. And my beef was, there's not a shot in hell that they're going to turn on him, because none of their purported principles are long-standing principles. They're not going to take any of these things and say, oh, well, I was with Trump until he decided to, embrace war in XYZ country. Like, it's just not going to happen. They will turn every single purported principle on its head if it means that, if the God King told them to. And Cenk feels is of the mind that that they are principled, and that all it's going to take is Trump doing something to push them away. But I'm very firmly of the mind that they don't give a shit what happens in the world. That if Trump says suddenly something is okay, that they've been against since day one of their lives, that because Daddy Trump said it, suddenly they're going to go along with it. Let me see if I could do a let me see if I could actually find let's see here.
Portion of that was corporate donors
Against the establishment, that they should be against these donors, when they're the list goes on and on, right? It's the list that we have spoken about earlier. But when will you stop giving certain people at this event, for example? Okay, so I think this is it. So I'll go regular speed, because I listen to everything at least 2x like a lunatic. Benefit of the doubt in terms of their actions not matching up, that even though, right, like, in good faith, and whether there is, again, to my earlier question, no actual long-standing principle, it's other than fealty to the God King, right? Like I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out here, because thus far there has been no indication that, even though they say they're for anti-corruption, Donald Trump's the most corrupt guy to ever sit in the Oval Office, even though they say that they're, for the list goes on and on, right? It's the list that we have spoken about earlier. But when will you stop giving certain people at this event, for example, the benefit of the doubt in terms of their actions not matching up to their rhetoric?
Yeah. So I think some things are clear, right? So, for example, we're not going to win on a whole heap of issues, right? So, like, if I try to convince them that the crypto bros are going in the wrong direction, right, I'm going to get massive blowback, and I'm never going to win on that.
Correct.
Okay. So that's going to take 4 years and probably us getting robbed to the tune of a couple of $1 trillion before they realize that mistake. Okay, so I'm super realistic about all of these different things. I think that on corruption, they're never going to want to admit in the beginning that Trump is doing favors for their donors. Although, again, I see right-wing hosts and people in their audience going, I understand what you're saying about Jeff Yaz and TikTok. I understand what you're saying about electric vehicles and Elon. So that's the beginning, right? It's not the end. So then my best guess is the anti-war stuff is where the rubber hits the road. So he put in, and Brian, parts of your audience, parts of the left-wing hosts, etc., might not love this, but my sense is that the rubber's probably going to hit the road on Israel. And so here's why. Because Trump put in Marco Rubio, Elise Stefanik, Mike Huckabee, and Mike Walls as Team Miriam. That's his,
Right.
the four people that he's handing foreign policy to. Miriam Adelson is a supporter of the hard right wing in Israel. And so they're going to push towards outrageous positions like annexing the West Bank, annexing northern Gaza. Israeli press has already written about this. Israeli cabinet ministers are already excited about this. If they try to annex, for example, the West Bank, it probably will lead to a vicious, bloody war. But I don't know the contours of it. They might just slaughter the Palestinians again. I'm not naive enough to think that MAGA is going to be like, oh my God, we're losing precious Palestinian and Muslim lives, right? No, but I think at some point they're going to say, look, guys, this isn't America first. Why are we paying for another war of Israel? Why are we paying for another war of Israel, right?
Yeah.
So, and if they don't, though, and then they go, hey, you know what? I mean, now let's do an extreme example. If
I don't know that I agree with that. Like, I don't know that I agree. Trump installed a bunch of pro-Israel pro-Israel hawks into his cabinet anyway, and they've been pretty clear about where they stand on Israel-Palestine anyway. I guess it just remains to be seen whether these people actually feel like this is some hardline position, and if the U.S. funds Israel's continued war in the Middle East, like, is that going to be enough to make these people who voted for Trump suddenly turn on him? He's been pretty clear about where he stands on this issue. I guess. Look, I think the reality is that Cenk is just much more willing to give Trump supporters the benefit of the doubt, whereas, in my opinion, there is not a world in which 95% of them take issue with anything that he does. Like, I really do believe that if Trump decides to spend half of our budget on some Middle Eastern war, that these people will find some justification for it and say, oh, well, we have to, because otherwise, 9/11 is going to happen here again. I just don't see a world in which any of these people say, yeah, I was with Trump until I saw his pro-war bona fides show themselves. So do I think that Cenk is acting in bad faith? I don't, and that might be naive. But I don't think he's acting in bad faith. I just simply think he is giving way too much credit to the least discerning people on God's green earth, to people who would bend over backwards for Trump, who have already shown that none of their stated values matter for anything. These are people who for the last 50 years have been claiming, oh, we're pro-Constitution, before they lined up behind a guy who would prevent the first peaceful transfer of power in America's history. These are people who for their entire lives have said that they were states' rights until Trump tried to pass the Texas lawsuit that got shut down at the Supreme Court that sought to invalidate the election results in 4 other random states, or how Lindsey Graham introduced a nationwide abortion ban the minute that Roe was overturned, even though for the last 51 years, these Republicans have been saying that they just want it to be a states issue until the second it was passed. And then there was a bill in the House and the Senate, both trying to get this thing limited to 8 6, 8, 12 weeks at the national level, like, there are no long-standing principles that any of these Trump supporters have shown that they're willing to abide by. And so suddenly Cenk thinks that they're gonna abide by this idea that, oh, so long as he's anti-war, we'll stand by him. But if he's suddenly pro-war, we're gonna turn on him, even though we haven't turned on him when he undermined our ability to say that we're pro-Constitution. We didn't turn on him when he undermined our ability to say that we're pro-states' rights, when he undermined our ability to say that we're pro-fiscal responsibility, when he undermined our ability to say that we're pro-family values, when he undermined our ability to say that we're pro-law enforcement, pro-military, pro-police. Every single stated principle of the Republican Party has been duly trashed by Donald Trump. He has left them zero plausible deniability to continue claiming that they are any of these things, and yet dude still won. They all backed him at the 90-something percentile. So they've not shown that they're willing to, like, use anything he does and like turn on him because of it. The only long-standing principle, the only thing that matters, is fealty to the God King. It is when Trump says jump, they say how high. That's it. Trump could say, vote for me, I'm anti-war today, and they'll vote for him. And then he can say, pay your taxes, we're going to double them all so that we can invade Bulgaria, and they'll do it. The same way that they, the same way they do anything in blind deference to him.
Trump helps Israel start a war with Iran and says we have to finance it, and they don't rebel, then I was totally wrong. And I think
I understand completely, and that's and these are good examples, and it's good to have this sense of like where it could go in the future, and I think that's a realistic example as well. But I think what you are probably giving more credit than I will is this sense that any of this stuff matters, because again, there has been they haven't shown any discernment thus far on any of the things that they claimed were their principles. All right, so I guess I'm consistent because I was about to explain the exact same thing that I explained before. But look, the fact remains that I don't believe any of these people care about any of that stuff. And look, the last thing I want to do is I do, and look, this might be me being naive, but I do think that Cenk is acting in good faith. I don't think he should be attacked by trying to go into these spaces like AmFest, where there are only Republicans. I think that we have a big lesson that we can learn in terms of reaching out to people, even in spaces that are hostile. I don't know that those people are operating in good faith. I mean, that is like, if you're showing up to like Turning Point USA's AmFest, I don't know that you are gettable, but I don't think that we have anything to lose by making the case. Would I go? Probably not for my own safety, but like, I'm glad that he went to make the case. I'd rather him go to make the case than nobody go to make the case. It's not an easy case to make, but I also do think that that this idea that any of them are gonna leave Trump because of some stated like policy position, when we all know full well that these people aren't driven by policy positions. This is they're driven by whatever the God King tells them to do. It's just fealty to Trump. That is what guides the Republican Party, and what guides Trump is probably what's best for his wallet and his donors' wallets. That's going to be the guiding principle behind all of this. And then the key here, as far as right-wing media and Fox News is concerned, is figuring out how to twist Trump's policy positions, which are inconsistent and largely self-beneficial, how to convince the base, who won't derive any benefit from any of this stuff, why they should go along and support it. Why they should support a tax cut, for example, where 83% of the benefits are heaped onto the ultra-wealthy. Maybe they'll do it by presenting the idea of trickle-down economics and saying that we need to. Maybe they're going to scaremonger and say, oh, all the millionaires and billionaires will leave America if we don't pass it, and that'll hurt our national security, and then you won't have any jobs. And so they'll scare the lower and middle class into supporting it that way. That's going to be the goal of right-wing media in this country, to twist themselves into pretzels to figure out how to sell a turd, basically. But look, more power to anybody who thinks that any of these people are going to be moved on policy. I don't think there's a world in which they are moved on policy, and I think that it's just our, I think it's our job moving forward to make the case based on, the agenda that we want to pass, which should be a populist agenda, which should be an economically populist agenda, and should focus more heavily on helping working class people, on raising the minimum wage, bolstering unions. A lot of the policy positions that we focused on before it was kind of completely, all of that stuff was completely undermined by the social stuff that a lot of the Republicans put hundreds of millions of dollars behind to make this election a referendum, not on the economy, not on raising the wage or giving dignity to the working class or expanding health care, making sure that women have reproductive rights, not on any of that stuff, but rather fringe edge case issues that they knew, by the way, would benefit them socially, and that's what they did. So with that said, let's do this. Let's throw some questions into the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them and try to give you my take on some of this stuff that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to discuss otherwise. Will Mike Johnson be confirmed Speaker on January 3rd in time for January 6th? That is a good question, and I think the answer is more than likely yes. And that's because, as far as I know, Donald Trump did endorse Mike Johnson, which basically means that that it's more likely than not that he will get the support he needs, because if we know anything about today's Republican Party, it's that, again, Trump says jump, they say how high. And so he's issued the edict, and now we're more likely than not to see Mike Johnson get the requisite number of votes. I'm going to read a tweet here from John Bresnahan. Let me see if I can get it on the screen. Give me one quick sec. Okay. Not a note on counting votes for the Speaker. If 219 House Republicans show up on January 3rd and vote, and all 215 Democrats vote, Johnson can afford to lose 3 Republicans. If Gates shows up and votes, Johnson can afford to lose 4. If there are present votes or members don't vote, the number could change again. And so, by the way, for those who are wondering whether Gates can show up and vote, he can. He resigned from the 118th Congress, but not the 119th Congress, and so he still has the ability. He was voted into office. He still has the ability to go and vote for Speaker. He can still be a member of Congress. He doesn't have to resign whatsoever. He did it so that he would avoid the embarrassment, or try to avoid the embarrassment, of having the House ethics report released, but the House ethics report was released anyway, and so really there's no incentive for him to stay out of office, because the whole point of him resigning was to try and prevent something from happening that happened. So with that said, there is a narrow window. Johnson can afford to lose between 3 and 4 Republicans, and as Bresnahan from Punchbowl News mentioned, depending on what people do, whether some of them vote present, that would change the number of votes that he can afford to lose. I know that the last reporting was that Thomas Massie was a no, so that's 1 Republican that he could afford to lose, and I wouldn't expect any Democrats whatsoever to come on board and help Mike Johnson become Speaker. They're all going to vote for Hakeem Jeffries. So it'll be tight, but I think because Trump has issued his little clarion call that we're more than likely than not to see Mike Johnson win. It probably meant that Mike Johnson had to make some concessions or show that he was adequately willing to, or sufficiently willing to, kiss the ring if he needs to on any policy positions that Trump has. So he probably has done that. And so now any of these Republicans know that if they throw any wrench in Trump's plan, because he has another useful idiot, another tool to wield in Mike Johnson, if any Republicans throw a wrench in his plan, that Trump has the ability to primary them with both his endorsement and Elon Musk's money. I mean, this is full oligarchy in action. Elon Musk has all the money in the world, literally all the money in the world, to be able to throw to a primary challenger for anybody who doesn't, bend the knee for Trump and the America First agenda. And so, yeah, we should expect pretty much full compliance in the Republican Party insofar as they want to keep their jobs, and they're not going to do anything to put that at risk. How serious do I think Trump is about Panama, Greenland, and Canada's invasion? So if you scroll back in this stream, we started off by discussing the prospect of Trump invading these countries. How serious? Let me just to answer the question directly. How serious do I think he is? If I had to bet, I would say that we are not going to invade Canada, Greenland, and Panama. But at the same time, I don't know why they would be expending their political capital talking about this stuff, other than maybe it's just entertaining from a purely nakedly entertainment value standpoint, and doesn't really go beyond that. And maybe Trump wants to just perpetuate this thing so that more people can talk about it in other countries, and he can be more famous in other countries, even if he plays the heel. I think, Trump is very much of the mind that any coverage is good coverage, and so if it means that he can rile up people in Canada, rile up people in Greenland, rile up people in Panama, then that's what he'll do, because so long as people are talking about him, then he feels like adequately satisfied. So I think that's probably more like it. I do not think that the U.S. will think it is in our national security favor or economic favor to engage in land wars against the Canadians. I can't believe I'm discussing the prospect of this, but look, I think the most ridiculous part of all of this is that most people who voted for Trump did so because he beat his chest over and over and over about this idea that he will lower the cost of eggs. And instead of getting cheaper eggs, what these people are gearing up for is an invasion of 3 sovereign countries. So I don't know how that's going to lower the cost of eggs. I don't know what it's going to do to the cost of food if Trump tries to not only invade foreign countries, but also even just to a more normal degree, launch a trade war by imposing tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Think about how much food comes in from Mexico, how much produce, how many fruits and vegetables come in from Mexico on a daily basis. What if he starts his deportation plans? What do you think would happen to our food supply in the event? Who do you think works in all the fields? Who do you think makes sure that there's food on the table in this country? So do I think that he's serious about any of this? I can't say. The last thing I'm capable of doing is crawling into the skull of Donald Trump and trying to glean whether he's serious about anything that he does. But at the same time, I think we would be. It doesn't bode well that this is what he's trying to use his political capital to do. Whether he's serious or competent enough to actually effectuate any of it is anybody's guess. Are there steps that states can take to somewhat protect their citizens from the fallout of Trump's trade wars and other economic chaos that he and Musk might create? It's a good question, but frankly, I don't know, other than stockpiling resources. But the state isn't responsible for buying aluminum and steel appliances and parts and automotive machinery, and like, we live in a capitalist society, and so private companies are largely responsible for importing that stuff. And so I don't know if the state, like this, the only thing short of the states coming in and trying to pre-purchase a lot of this stuff in anticipation of a trade war, I don't think there is anything that you could do. I think all that you can do is try to, I mean, there is a world in which I actually don't know if it's possible for a state to have negotiated its own. I highly doubt it's even possible for a state to negotiate its own trade deal with a foreign country. I think that federal law is gonna reign supreme over any state law or state agreement. So I feel like the answer to that question, I may be wrong, but I feel like the answer to that question is no. And this is a good point. So I'm getting a comment. I feel like it's always a distraction, but what's he distracting from, for who, why? That's always what I'm wondering. I don't know what the point of this distraction here would be if his goal is to try and make people think that we're going to do some north and southward expansionism of U.S. sovereign territory, other than, let's fix this. Other than, I don't know, maybe to distract from the fact that a lot of the agenda being effectuated right now is solely to the benefit of Elon Musk and his finances. I mean, you even look at the continuing resolution. Elon was able to strip away a provision that throttled what was it? U.S. investment in U.S. investment in China, I believe it was. Let's see. Continuing resolution, China. So it would have prohibited or required notification of overseas transactions involving China in sectors like semiconductors, quantum technology, and AI. It would have also included an expanded review of Chinese real estate purchases near national security sensitive sites, and a requirement to study national security risks posed by Chinese-made consumer modems and routers. So would have made it more difficult to do business with the Chinese. And who has business interests in China, who has been cultivating his business interests in China, who has a brand new Tesla factory in Shanghai. Like there is a reason that Elon did not want that provision in the continuing resolution, and it was successfully stripped away. And what was a lot of our focus on? Rightly, our focus was on the fact that Elon stripped away kids' cancer, or that I don't want to say Elon stripped it away, but the bill that he no longer supported included provisions for funding pediatric cancer research, and then the bill that he did support, that had magically vanished. And so I think it's pretty easy to make the leap that Elon was responsible for that going away. And that's what people focused on, because it's a real issue that actually impacts real people in this country. And it's easy to understand, as opposed to saying that Elon stripped away a provision that would throttle our ability to do business in China. So it's easy to understand, but at the same time, that effectively served as the distraction for people, for Elon to get away with having stripped this away, because most of us were talking about pediatric cancer research funding. And when that was passed as a standalone in the Senate, because Tim Kaine finally got Rand Paul to drop his objection to the bill, it was finally passed as a standalone in the Senate. Like, it felt like a win after that, but in fact, the real win was that Elon was able to successfully strip that provision out of the continuing resolution, and so he'll benefit from that. And so when we have these things that serve as distractions, the person that usually benefits is either Trump or Elon, or in this case, Elon and his finances. And so, I don't know what we are not paying attention to right now by virtue of the fact that we're having a conversation about Trump trying to buy Canada and Greenland and Panama. But to your exact point, it usually is a distraction for something. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum. These things usually redound to the benefit of either Trump or somebody who is financially benefiting Donald Trump. I'm thinking Trump is serious about Greenland, Canada, and Panama. He wants to be a big man like Putin and is trying to follow the Ukraine playbook. And this is something I spoke about earlier. There is definitely some sense of like this would fill that like strongman void. Look what Putin is doing right now. He's tried to invade Georgia, Crimea, Ukraine. Obviously, China has territorial ambitions, not just with Hong Kong, but also Taiwan. And so there is a playbook for autocrats, and we can very clearly see Trump's proclivity to be a strongman in the same club as these other autocrats are. And so, look, I don't know. I mean, look, anybody who tells you they know what Donald Trump is doing or they know what's going to happen doesn't know. I also don't know what's going to happen or how serious he is, but it is not outside the realm of possibility that he sees these countries with imperial ambitions led by strongmen and autocrats and dictators, and he decides that seems like something I want to do unto myself. That seems like where I want to go with all of this. I view myself in the mold of somebody like Vladimir Putin, and so in the same way that he used his political capital to try and let's just say make Russia great again by ushering back an era where the USSR included all of this territory that has since been lost by the Russian Federation. Maybe Trump views this as a world in which he says, look, we're not trying to reconstitute parts of the US that were never there, but to grow it would have the same effect. And of course, you've got outlets like CNN who are perfectly content to do Trump's bidding by, I gotta find this push notification, and I'm sure some people have seen it. Here we go. Look at this. Trump, this is how CNN covered the prospect of Trump annexing sovereign countries that, by the way, are not for sale. Trump teases U.S. expansion. The president-elect has suggested that a territorial extension into Panama, Greenland, and Canada. If he's serious, it would rival the Louisiana Purchase. Yeah, that's great. They're not for sale. So what he's really saying is that he wants to effectuate a land war to annex sovereign countries? Like, what? What? And the way that CNN has decided to cover this as if it's akin to like the Louisiana Purchase is insane. Like, it's insane. What he's talking about is declaring war on our neighbor to the north and another neighbor to the south and a neighbor to the northeast. Like, this would amount to a declaration of war. And they're likening it to him just expanding the U.S. and it would be historic in the same way that the Louisiana Purchase would be historic. And it's just this collective suspension of reality that we're all engaging in right now. It's kayfabe. It's WWE. Like when I was a kid, I watched, it was WWF back then, but we all knew deep down, gun to our heads, that wrestling was fake. But we all just collectively agreed to pretend that it was real. And that's what makes the world work. And I feel like in the media, there is the same sense of kayfabe where like these people know the truth. Like CNN's not dumb. They understand that if in fact we were really to look into some territorial expansion, that the story coming out of this would not be the fact that it would be big like Louisiana Purchase, that it would effectively mean we've engaged in land war against Canada to usurp and annex a sovereign country, but like they all just suspend reality and we're all just playing make-believe that that's not what it would be, because I don't know, I don't know why. Maybe they want to be in the good graces of Donald Trump, and they know that he would like this, and it feeds into his ego where he gets to say, yeah, this would make me a historic president. This would get me in the history books, right? That is why he started Space Force. Not because we need Space Force. Nobody even knows what the fuck Space Force does. And it's because he wanted to do things that would make him seem like a grandiose figure in American history. And when CNN reports on it in the way that they are right now, where they're saying he's teased or suggested territorial extension, instead of saying Trump wants to annex a foreign country, and that would mean we have to declare war on 3 separate countries for a president who came into office on promises to raise the cost of eggs, like they're doing this because they know that it would make him feel good. And this is what it looks like in real time when these media companies do not take the threat of Trump seriously and when they obey in advance. And instead of saying this is fucking nuts, we're talking about a war with our allies in breach of NATO, which would mean it would be a world war, because if we were to invade a foreign country that's a member of NATO, that's a NATO nation state, that would mean the rest of the nations contained within NATO also have to defend Canada. Like, we would be in a world war. And if the way you choose to cover this is that, it would be big and shiny and pretty, just like the Louisiana Purchase would be, then you are in fact deferring to Donald Trump. You are obeying in advance. You are doing his bidding. You are making yourself into a propaganda arm of his White House. And that's crazy. And we see it with CNN here. We see it with Joe and Mika going down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. We see it with the LA Times and their billionaire owner preventing the newspaper from endorsing Kamala Harris. We see it from Jeff Bezos in the Washington Post doing the exact same thing and then giving $1 million to his inaugural fund. We see it with Mark Zuckerberg also giving $1 million to the inaugural fund. We see it with ABC News saying, we have a defamation suit that is absolutely winnable and does not match the bar of what Donald Trump would need to prove to successfully win a defamation suit. And yet, not only are we not going to contest this, but we're going to settle for $15 million anyway, so that we can give Daddy Trump the money that he wants from us, and we have some plausible deniability to hide behind while we're doing it. This is all the media abdicating the responsibility to do their jobs and hold power to account, and yet instead engaging in these fantasies that they know full well he'll enjoy reading about. And so we're left with headlines like this one. The president-elect has suggested a territorial extension into Panama, Greenland, and Canada. If he's serious, it would rival the Louisiana Purchase. If he's serious, it would mean that we're in a world war that the U.S. started for no fucking reason, other than just to massage his ego because he has these grandiose ambitions as some impending autocrat to do exactly what Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are doing in the East. And yet this is the media that we're left with. Like, if you're wondering why people are flocking to independent media, this is why, in a nutshell. This one push notification is why, in a nutshell. And I cannot get over reading stuff like this from a media that purports to be serious. This is the stuff that you would expect Tim Pool and Jack Posobiec and Ben Shapiro to write about, not CNN. Like, what are we doing here? How have they learned? They have learned that, like, negative lessons. Like, they have seen their own viewers depart in spades from their coverage to the point where legacy media is getting not millions, not hundreds of thousands, but tens of thousands of viewers. And yet their response to all of this is to continue digging deeper into just the lunacy that has enveloped so much of our media coverage already, that was the impetus for all these people to leave in the first place. It's just nuts. It's just nuts. So, look, if ever there was a pitch to support independent media, if you're watching this right now and you're not yet subscribed or following, please feel free to follow along or subscribe, whatever is best for you. and also support other creators who you trust and who you think are gonna deliver accurate information, and most importantly, who are gonna meet the moment with the urgency that it deserves. And like, we are going to enter into a period of uncertainty in a few days here, and you would like to think that the media would be there to do its job and not just, I don't know, try and garner clicks by teasing, by giving Donald Trump the pets that he so desperately wants. But that's all this is. And if this is, in any indication, a message as to how the media is going to treat the next 4 years, then I think that bodes really poorly for our media ecosystem more broadly, and for democracy writ large. Yeah, I'm seeing legacy media. If at first you don't succeed, do the same thing over and over again and learn nothing. Perfectly put, Cal. Perfectly put. Okay. One quick note here. I've got a Discord. The Discord is only available to people who've watched the last few streams. It's like a soft launch of the Discord, but so it's pinned in the chat right now. So if you're not yet a member of the Discord, just go ahead and join. We're very soft launching it. I'll be able to focus more on it after the holidays are over. It's been a lot of like traveling and whatnot. So as soon as the holidays are kind of behind us, then it will be much more. First of all, these live streams will be much more consistent. I'm not able to, like I'm sure a lot of you, I also get dragged into family obligations on the other side of the country, and so it's been a busy last week, and it will continue to be a busy next few days. But I think once we get into January 6th and beyond, everything will be consistent, and we'll really lean into the Discord and stuff. So, and we will get a consistent schedule as well. So that's where we're at. With that said, I'll leave it there for right now, but thank you to everybody for tuning in. Hope everybody had a good Christmas, got good stuff. I got when I say that 95% of my gifts were dark chocolate, I am not even close to being facetious. 95% of my gifts were dark chocolate, which is perfectly fine by me. That is the stuff that fuels me. So I guess you get to an age where like you stop wanting toys and clothes, and eventually just you need the caffeine hits from chocolate and coffee to keep you awake, and getting momentary bouts of, I don't know what the chemical process is that makes people happy after they eat chocolate, but whatever that is. All right. So let's see. We are streaming right now on YouTube and Twitch. I'm gonna end the YouTube stream. If anybody wants to, I'll keep it going on Twitch for a little bit and answer some questions. But for anybody on YouTube, if you want to hop over to Twitch, you can. It's just Brian Tyler Cohen on Twitch. So for those on YouTube, thank you for watching. We'll end it there, and those on Twitch will hang for a little bit longer. So thanks, everybody.